Hey Kula folks, I hope all of you are having a beautiful day. So today we are doing some Kula story time. My mom sent me this box of stuff that apparently my grandmother had saved. She had saved everything that I had ever sent her, including essays that I had written and sent to her. And this box arrived last night and I was going through it and reading the essays, and one of them in particular stood out to me because it is without a doubt one of my favorite stories to tell. And I thought that most of you might enjoy hearing this because it also involves my sister Mare and the time that we both got lost for an entire night in the city of Venice, Italy. So here we go. Okay, one very minor disclaimer before I read this is that this story was from 2001. So there was no smartphones, no Google, no map in the palm of your hand. So when I'm talking about getting lost in Venice, we did not have access to a cell phone to look up where we were. Secondly, I mention an ex-boyfriend in this essay who also happened to be named Aaron, who is my husband now, is named Aaron. This is not the same Aaron. I just want to be clear. This is a different Aaron, an ex-boyfriend. But yeah, this is a story from 2001 and I hope you enjoy it. Okay, so before we get started, very important that you all see a photo from that night. So this is this is before we got lost in Venice. There's Mare. And this amazing human right here is me. Now Mare, and I just love the sort of the hygienic aspect of how many straws are in this one drink and how many people are consuming it, first off. But my sister pointed out something pretty funny here. Okay, so if you look very closely at me, you will notice that my straw is completely has a kink in it. So I'm literally just sucking air for that photo. So anyway, now that you know what was happening, you get to hear the whole story. We didn't know we were lost until 30 minutes after we had left Disco Casanova. My sister Mary, my boyfriend Aaron, and I tried to remember the dozens of canals and alleys that had passed, but I soon began to wish that we had left a trail of breadcrumbs. It was approximately 1 a.m. on January 3rd in Venice, Italy. With the temperature below freezing, there was an eerie emptiness to the cold air, and the lack of cars in the floating city left only the noise of an occasional boat slowly putting through the narrow canals. We were not dressed to be lost. While I was wearing my sneakers and a thin winter coat, Mare was dressed for the disco. Her tall boots and long leather jacket were not suited for a hike in the middle of the night. I knew that we had to find our way back to the hotel as soon as possible. We thought we knew which direction to travel, and so we started walking. After an hour, it became blatantly clear that we had no idea where we were. As if by fate, we saw a small wooden sign pointing towards the Rialto Bridge, one of the two main bridges in Venice that crosses the Grand Canal. I knew if we crossed this bridge and could find our way back to St. Mark's Square, where we had been touring all day, we would be able to find our way back to the hotel. It was now 2:30 a.m., The Rialto Bridge rose up in the dark like a large marble serpent arching its back over the Grand Canal, a welcome sight to lost travelers. As we approached the bridge, Mare suddenly realized that she had crossed the canal here earlier in the day with my parents. "I know where we are," she cried. "I know how to get back to the hotel from here." "No way," I replied. "We're just going to end up getting lost again. We have to get to St. Mark's Square." And then it happened. Mare uttered the phrase that has gone down in family infamy. "If you are ever going to trust me this once." As if by fate, we saw a small wooden sign pointing towards the Rialto Bridge, one of the two main bridges in Venice that crosses the Grand Canal. I knew if we crossed this bridge and could find our way back to St. Mark's Square, where we had been touring all day, we would be able to find our way back to the hotel. It was now 2:30 a.m. The Rialto Bridge rose up in the dark like a large marble serpent arching its back over the Grand Canal, a welcome sight to lost travelers. As we approached the bridge, Mare suddenly realized that she had crossed the canal here earlier in the day with my parents. "I know where we are," she cried. "I know how to get back to the hotel from here." "No way," I replied. "We're just going to end up getting lost again. We have to get to St. Mark's Square." And then it happened. Mare uttered the phrase that has gone down in family infamy. "If you are ever going to trust me this once." We trusted her. And after 45 minutes, realizing that we were more lost than before, the structure of our small group mentality started to fall apart. Erin and I decided that going back to St. Mark's Square was the only option. Mare insisted she was going to go by herself, now close to 3:30 a.m., back to the hotel. The three of us stood in the middle of a small courtyard, dark buildings looming on all sides. The quiet of the night was broken only by our yelling. Mare hysterically screaming at Erin and I yelling back at her that she wasn't allowed to go off by herself. I wonder now how many people woke from their sleep and ran to their windows to peer at the commotion below. The yelling dwindled down when Mare realized she was fighting a losing battle. We were completely lost and we had to find our way back to the Rialto Bridge. We trudged along until we saw a small sign for a hotel. Excitedly, we clambered down the nearly pitch-black alley to the hotel door. I pressed the buzzer, and the three of us stared with hopeful yet frightened eyes as we heard the noise of footsteps down a long marble hallway. The giant wooden doors opened towards us, and we were greeted by the hotel night clerk, who spoke minimal but good enough English. The problem with Venice is that the people who live there know exactly how to find their way around, but it is next to impossible to give directions that tourists can understand. When we said the name of our hotel, he recognized the name, but the directions would have probably been something to the extent of, "Go 20 feet, turn down a short alley, cross a bridge over a canal, turn right after the floating grocery cart boat," which might or might not even be there. "Down your second alley, cross a courtyard, follow the street that's 60 degrees from the center of the courtyard," etc. You get the idea. He gave us a map, which was virtually useless because it didn't show where any of the smaller canal bridges were. It was 4:30 a.m., but we saw a sign for the Rialto Bridge as we headed in that direction. As we crossed the Rialto Bridge, I think we all breathed a sigh of relief. This was it, the final stretch of the journey. It would take us a mere 10 minutes to walk to St. Mark's Square, then we had to cross the Americano Bridge, and then another 15-minute walk back to the hotel. Well, that might have been the case if Venice were not Venice. We saw a sign for St. Mark's Square, which led us through more convoluted winding streets. At this point, Mare's feet were so badly bruised from her boots that she was beginning to drag behind Erin and I, and we could hear her crying quietly to herself. We were all so cold, we couldn't feel our legs anymore. We followed the signs to the best of the ability, and suddenly we found ourselves in the middle of a huge courtyard. The signs ended. We had no idea where we were. We needed a miracle. Our miracle came in the form of a Venetian local on her way home from a long night of partying. We heard her footsteps echo across the courtyard, and the three of us called out to her for help. I asked her where the Americano Bridge was, and she pointed us down one of the 20 streets that branched off the courtyard. She was the only person we saw outside during our entire 5-hour ordeal. We crossed the Americano Bridge at approximately 5:30 in the morning. It was still dark, but the light was just beginning to peek out from the horizon. The city rose up from the water before us, and the gondolas bobbed up and down at their posts. We trudged back to the hotel together.